The South African environment is tenuous at best. We're on the brink of a likely downgrade. Moody's, the last ratings agency to keep us in investment grade, warned us just after the medium-term budget policy statement that we were living on borrowed time in terms of the credit rating. Tito Mboweni is using that big stick to pass the message around to government that actually this is quite a serious state of affairs. But lots of South Africans are giving up hope in the future of the country. Fani Titi, Chief Executive of Investec. I mean, it's understandable, I suppose, at times of economic inflection, that people do get scared about the future.
Normally when you look at headlines on a day-to-day basis, you can see that there's a level of turmoil, and you look at headlines around GDP growth. We are literally crawling at between 0.5% to 1%. You look at the level of joblessness in the economy. So the fear is not unjustified. We are business people, though, and we run a bank and a wealth manager, and we have to look for ways to support our clients through difficult times. These times, you need to build resilience. And you need to retain a sense of optimism, and you need to be on your front foot so that where opportunity does arise, you can take advantage of it. In fact, Investec is best in times that are tough because we don't have the largest capital base, nor do we have the cheapest capital. So when the times are tough, that's when we are able to support our clients.
Provided you can look through the difficult times. And I mean, one goes back in history and one can, with a gift of hindsight, go, well, of course it was never going to collapse then. People just muddled through, and people who were opportunists at the time made big investments when people were too scared to. But when you're in the middle of it, as we are now, it's very hard to see through the other side. Can you?
It looks very difficult, but we've been around for 40 years. We've gone through a number of crises, including political crisis in the country. In fact, the world as a whole is at a point of inflection. You think South Africa is very tough, and it is tough. 2 weeks ago, we shared a stage with Richard Branson, the chairman of Virgin, and he said, do you want to go to Italy if you leave South Africa? Do you want to go to the UK and face issues around Brexit? Do you want to go to America and deal with Trump and the issues that America is dealing with as a country? So the world is in a difficult space, as it were. But over time, if you keep your nerve, and leaders need to keep their nerves and be long-term in their planning, you're able to navigate some of these difficult times. What is required, though, in South Africa is bold decision-making to avoid what is clearly a fiscal cliff, and a cliff that the country, if we go over it, we will take a decade or more to come back from.
The point is, it is avoidable. Yet, politicians are battling to make the tough decisions. And at some point, that decision's taken out of their hands, but still too terrified to act. Do you have the ear of the president? Do you have the ear of the Treasury? Do you deliver this message?
Look, the banking industry is a powerful industry, very critical to the success of any economy. In fact, literally every week, the government, whether through the Treasury or public enterprises, reaches out to the banking industry to support some of the SOEs. As we speak, SAA is facing a crisis of a strike, and they're cancelling flights. We have a critical issue around Eskom as the highest risk that the country faces. So the banking industry and the leaders of that industry are engaged with both Treasury and public enterprises and the government generally in terms of trying to support them, but also to give messages that are pretty pointed as to what needs to be done.
At what point do you play hardball? At what point do you say, no, we can't keep funding
that point is now.
SOEs, because we saw Future Growth, which was an asset management company owned by Old Mutual probably 2 or 3 years ago, now saying we can't keep lending money into SOEs. This is pensioners' money. This is money that's got to be conservatively and safely invested. And the guy who made the call, a man called Andrew Cantor, got into all kinds of trouble with his bosses at Old Mutual. And Old Mutual apologized. This was during the Zuma administration. But at some point, capital has got to say, no, we can't keep throwing good money after bad. Are we there?
It's not only good money after bad, but if, as banks, we do not take a stronger stance around this issue, we would transmit the risk from the SOEs into the banking sector, and that would put the financial system and the country at risk. We cannot afford to do that. So I think banks are very clear, the credit committees are very clear, their boards are very clear that we have to remain prudent in terms of risk management and draw a line in the sand. Frankly, the country has come to a cliff edge. The Treasury knows this. The Minister of Finance has been exemplary in his analysis of the situation and how dire it is. Obviously, he has to convince his colleagues to act, and in particular, the President to act on an urgent basis. We are now on a timeline with Moody's. We cannot afford a downgrade. And as you say, the decisions are not too difficult to make, but they are not too difficult to see what needs to be done. The issue is whether there is courage. So we are at a point where we require courageous decisions. Every family, every business gets to a point where you need to make choices. Do you send your child to school or do you buy a car? As a business, do you keep a business unit that is failing, or do you take that capital and you reinvest in the rest of the business? The country is now facing that moment of truth. Its leaders have to stand up.
Fani Titi, thank you very much indeed. Fani Titi is the Chief Executive of Investec. Wrapping up this evening's edition of Taking Stock. Thank you so much for watching us here on ENCA. More again next week. Bye-bye.